LLC, Pest Geek Podcast, Living the Wildlife Podcast, Stephen Vantassel, or his affiliates are not responsible for followers' use of the information provided here. Hi everyone, Stephen Vantassel, Wildlife Control Consultant, bringing you another episode of Living the Wildlife as part of the Pest Geek Podcast family. Glad to have you on board. I hope your week went well. Mine didn't go as well as I would have liked, but nevertheless, I'm glad the weekend is certainly here when I'm recording here on a Sunday. So glad to have you with us. Do take a few moments of your time if you would, and be sure to subscribe to the channel to make sure that you get all the latest releases, as well as ring the bell and announce those releases. And also join us on Facebook for our Facebook page of the Pest Geek Podcast area. Glad to have you join us. You can reach us there, of course, at Facebook, and join the revolution as Franklin likes to call it. So do join us there. You can ask questions, give us your triumphs, issues that you're struggling with, triumphs and trials. We'd be glad to hear from you. You can also reach me at wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com. That's wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com. Love to hear from you, thoughts on shows, issues that you're struggling with that you'd like to have addressed. And yes, of course, even criticisms that you may have about the show. Can't say glad to hear the criticisms, but certainly willing to hear those criticisms. Again, you can reach me there at wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com. This week, I thought I would talk a little bit about Google Earth. And so this was a program that you can get with Google, of course. And you can actually get the web version pretty easily. And so you can just simply go to Google Earth. So let me just sort of type that in here. Google Earth. There you go. You don't even have to install anything. This is the web version of Google Earth. And you can see it's getting there now. And we can let's go to Lewistown, Montana, where I live. So let's do Lewistown, Montana. Let's see how I fly in there. Alrighty, well, so here we are in Lewistown, Montana. This is where I live, and so you can tell we're not a very big community out here in the center of the state. And you have some interesting functions. Notice it tells us here in the right-hand side where it tells us Lewistown's a city in and the county seat of Fergus County, Montana, which is certainly true. Population as part of our census in 2020 was almost 6,000 people. So we are certainly a rip-roaring happening place to be out here in Lewistown. But why is this important? So you can get some interesting data wherever you're at in the country, and it's a good way for you to kind of get a bird's eye view of your service area. Or perhaps you have a situation where a client is asking you questions about a service that you provide, and you need to maybe check it out before you're driving out there, especially as gasoline is, in my area, I think it's $4.06 if memory serves. So the price is certainly starting to creep back up. I'm recording here October 16th, 2022. Gasoline prices are going up, and time is money. And if you can do something through an internet search without having to necessarily drive out there, all the better. So this is something that you can certainly do. So let's take a look. I'm going to zoom in here. I'm going to sort of click out of that. And I'm going to go down here to the right-hand side, and I hit the plus signal, and that brings me, of course, closer to the ground, of course, as we're flying in here. And so let's say we had a house that we were wanting to service, and maybe they're having a particular issue, maybe with maybe ground squirrels or maybe squirrels that are getting around the house. We can continue to scroll in. So let's start with a more area. Maybe they have skunks moving in that are tearing up their grass per se, and you're trying to say, well, where are these skunks possibly coming onto the property? You can see it's fairly urbanized here, but I could take a little pin here, and I could tell my technician, say, well, there's a little area here, looks like it could be a stream. Yeah, it looks like a stream. And I could put a little pin drop there and just say a new project. Let's call it skunk. Okay, and so I would want to be sure that maybe some traps or trap location might be put there. So this is something I'd want maybe my technician to go in, or yourself even, and say, you know, I want to put some traps here because I think the skunks are probably going to be approaching the property from this side. And let's say you did some work on property based on land area. You say, you know, they said, well, you know, we have voles or we have skunks. How large of a property does this person own? And that's obviously going to affect your price, because the more land area you have, the more work that may be involved. Excuse me, perhaps you're dealing with moles, for instance. So we can actually do some measurements here. And so we can kind of do click and then come across here, do a click, and then do a click, and then do a click, and then do a click. Close the shape. Notice how it tells us here, this is 4,401 square meters, and I would suspect there's a way to change that into square yards. And notice how we have 5,264 square yards. The perimeter, we could do that, of course, in yards as well. It's 305 yards in the perimeter, and there's the land area there. And so you can kind of get an idea of how much land area you're doing simply by clicking around. You say, well, Stephen, you say, well, maybe I'm in such an urbanized area that you're never having to do any type of land work or area type work. I need to get an idea of what the house looks like. So you could, let's click out of this here. You can then scroll, you can kind of zoom in some more. We're going to keep zooming in. We're going to take a look at this house, and I'm going to go down here, and I'm going to go down to street level. So it says select an area highlighted in blue to enter street view. So I'm going to go down here. So I'm going to click him. Whoops, click him. And then I'm going to kind of go down here. So no street view is available. Oh, area blue. Here we go. Sorry. So I'm going to go to the street level. Bang. Now I'm able to look around and say, okay, what's going on at this particular street location? Now, again, it's not perfect, obviously, because Google's not able to sort of drive onto private property and take visuals. So in this situation, if I was looking at this particular house, I'm not going to be able to look at too much, but I can get an idea of just how much vegetation is around. So perhaps I could ask questions if I'm on the phone with the client, or maybe follow up with the client and say, hey, can I get ladders up against your house? Are there going to be some issues there? I can see if I'm going to have, if my truck is tall, am I going to have trouble getting into this driveway, for instance? And then you're able to look around and say, what kind of habitat is at this particular house? Now look at this house. We do have a pretty good look here of what kind of shrubbery is around, and how does this particular property look. And so this is called street level, and so it's something to definitely check it out. It gives you what kind of a drive is here, because tree, and so you're really able to get a lot of information without really doing a whole lot. And again, this is the web-based version of Google Earth. So let's kind of re-highlight what we were able to do with Google Earth. We were able to get a bird's eye view of the site location. We were able to evaluate and determine what kind of land area was involved in a particular site by doing some measurements. We can do that linearly or in area just by creating various boxes, and Google Earth will calculate how many acres you have or square yardage or whatever type of situation you have. And then we can go down into street view and try to look at the location from the street. Now, sometimes, of course, when you're dealing with private property, you're not going to get a full picture around the structure per se, but you can certainly get a lot. And it's something that I would certainly encourage you to use, particularly if you're looking in situations where you need to make some quotes and you're trying to get a kind of maybe a down and dirty quote without necessarily having to go out to the location and doing a lot of work. Because if you can kind of describe what you're seeing with the client and just asking some questions and getting some truth grounding or ground truthing the information you're getting from Google Earth, this can go a long way. Because one of the challenges, as much as I love Google Earth here, One of the challenges with using it is that you don't know when these photos were taken per se. Now notice what it says here, copyright date is 2022, but we don't know when this particular picture was taken. It may be 2022, I don't know. And so this is something you're going to have to ground truth with your client to make sure that what you're seeing is still valid, that maybe a tree isn't growing or maybe it was cut down, because Google Earth is relying on two separate sources of information. The first source of information, of course, is the satellite going overhead. Second source of information is they have a vehicle that has a large camera on top, and they just drive the public roads and just collect data. And then they compile all this to allow you to sort of scroll to it in any way. And so this is something, so obviously the photos are time bound. They're not going to give you real time. You're not going to be able to move a satellite over to where your client is. That is extraordinarily expensive. It would be cheaper for you to drive there, of course. And I think the U.S. military would, of course, have some issues with us being able to move satellites around. All right. Nevertheless, clearly, this is a very powerful tool. And so if you're coming out, let's get out of Street View here, kind of go back. This gives you a lot. So let's say you've been hired by this particular property owner, and again, they're having some skunk issues. You're able to get a good idea, where would I be thinking that the skunks are approaching this particular property? Where would I need to be sure that I'm placing my traps? Are there streams around? Because these are things that you can see from above that you may not be able to see from a ground view. And again, it can be extraordinarily powerful for you and save you an incredible amount of time, increase your productivity, increase your profitability, and make sure your clients are satisfied. And it can be very helpful. Maybe you can print one of these larger maps out, and then all of a sudden you can put pins and say, where have we had bat work? Where have we had skunk work? Where have we had raccoon work? And again, that can be something that can be helpful for as you strategize where your advertising dollars should be. I think that this sort of tool is probably underutilized, and it certainly makes sense. You're busy. It's just another piece of equipment that you have to learn. However, I think we need to be thinking smarter as things have been just getting more expensive in this inflation-driven economy right now. And so we have to use technology in a way to try to get an edge against inflation and also improve our competitiveness with other wildlife control operators. And so, again, a tool in your toolbox, something for you to consider. Play around with it. Instead of playing a game or spending too much time on Facebook, maybe there's an app for this as well, as you can or do the web version and just simply check things out on this. Now, let me show you another product here from Google, and that is you can download the program called Google Earth Pro, and you can download that. Now, I've already downloaded it, but just want you to show here that you can download this particular program. There it is, okay, Google Earth Pro download, and you can download this, and again, it has no cost. I don't know what kind of data Google is collecting on me. Lord knows they probably know more about me than I know about myself, and that's another question. But nevertheless, this is something, it's not necessarily going to cost you something out of your pocket per se, but it does give you a way to download the program. And I have been more familiar with using the program than I am the web-based version. I like, so I can't really say what the major differences are, because I haven't done a lot of side-by-side comparison, really none. However, what I like about the program version, at least in terms of my use, is I'm just comfortable with it. And you have these things called layers, and I like the little key bar at the top. It seems to me, in my limited analysis here, that you have more functionality with the downloaded program than you do with the web version. Now, one of the things you want to look at here, and that is, I'm looking here at this particular site. Let's go to, Lewistown, Montana. So I'm going to do a search there. Okay, so it's taken me back out to Lewistown. All right, so let's go back to where we were before. I think I was back over here. So let's kind of zoom into that particular site. I got to find find my zoomer here, and oh, here it is, over here to the right. Okay, so we're gonna zoom down to this particular location. Okay, and we're gonna keep zooming down to where I believe where we were before. This is it here. Okay, so I'm back to where I was before, and again, I can come up here to the area where I can do a path or add a polygon, and I'm going to click the polygon, and I'm going to click here, and then click here, and then click there, and then click there, and then click there, and then there, and then there, and then I can ask it, per se, what is the land area for this particular area. Let's see if it tells me. It's been a while since I've used it. Okay, so oops, I'll take that. And borders, labels, places, terrain. Well, let's try something else. Let's do a clear on that. There it is. That's what I needed to do. Click the wrong thing. So let me get out of this again. Needed to use the ruler, not the polygon marker there. So let me get back to where I was here. Okay, we're zooming in, or what they call flying in to the site. And you have all of these abilities in the layers side where you can take photos and look at places and roads. And if I don't want to see the road names, I can take the road names off. Notice how it has different overlays here. It gives you, like, this is the Meadows apartment area. Here I'm dealing with some private property. So I'm going to click that off. Now I'm going to go up here to the ruler. We got the ruler highlighted, and I'm going to do a polygon. Okay, so I'm going to click. I'm going to find out what the land area is of this particular property. Path. I'm not sure why that's not giving me the line here, so let me well, that's kind of weird. I don't know why this is not working for me. Okay. Yeah, I don't understand what's happened here. So this is kind of weird. I just installed this today. I didn't have it installed before. So let's try to do a circle. Huh. I do not know what's happened with this. So I'm a little surprised. I haven't had problems with this before. Now it's giving me an error code. There we go. So something has happened. So my program crashed. It's probably the problem that I'm having. I've got a lot of programs up here. Okay, we're going to come up here. We're going to go Lewistown, Montana. And we're going to fly in. Okay, I'm going to continue to zoom down to that location where we were before. Okay, there it is. Now we're going to do some measurements here. Let's see if I'm going to continue to have this problem here. So let's go click. Here we go. See, yeah, my program was having some problems. All right, so this is the line. I'm going to do a polygon. So notice what it gives me now. In that particular, is it a rhombus? I think it's a rhombus. We're looking at 4,123.27 square meters. And we can change that into square yards. It gives me 4,931 and 0.4 square meters. So again, this is something where you're able to determine the land area for a particular location. So we can do this, then come up to here, and now it gives me another square meters, and I can do it by acres if I wish. So here we're looking at almost 11 acres for this particular property. That's a lot for a community here. I don't know whether this person owns all of it, but they might. But nevertheless, this is a way for you to determine what a particular land area. I do think that, and you can save some of these things, so we can save that navigation if we wish, and call it something if we wish. We can say, XYZ home land area, print that off, give it to your technician or yourself, and you could already pre-plan what you're going to be doing at this particular location. So especially for some of you that are maybe a little more rural areas, sometimes it can be hard to determine, where someone's boundary ends or begins. This is an interesting program that can help you determine that as well, because they have different overlays that you can have. You can have borders and labels. If you want to have those, you can toggle them on or off. You can toggle on places on or off. And you can also do roads on or off, the names of roads. 3D buildings, you can ask for weather if you wish, and then even have a gallery if you wanted to have a gallery. I think the gallery is used for things that are much more like touristy. You may want to check some of that out. And again, you can also go down into the area where, let me clear all this now. I'm going to cancel that, so we clear that. So now we're going to go down and get a little bit closer to the area that we're working on here. And we're going to go down to a street view. We're going to go down here, that street view. And again, there you've seen this before. We can simply turn it around, and we're having a street view of this particular location. Very, very powerful tool. Oops, let me move that back. Very, very powerful tool. It even gives you directionality. Let's say if you wanted to say, where am I looking now? Am I looking north? Yep. Now I'm looking, not quite south. Now I'm looking south. So gives you functionality, or you can have this, you can type in the sun if you wish. I believe that tells you how the sun is moving. I'm going to exit Street View. So now here we have the sun view. And you can actually know which way the sun is moving from a particular area. So there we go. We can then take a look at the sun, how the sun is moving across the particular area. How things look. Play around with it. We can certainly look at a timeline. I think that's a timeline. I haven't used all the historical imageries to see how things change. Now, when I talked before about the issue of dating, notice how it says here down below. Maybe I should blow that up for you here. But I'm going to try to focus down here at the bottom of the screen. I hope you can see it. It says imagery date 8/18/2022. So this shot that I'm looking at here was recorded in August 18th of this year. So this is pretty recent information. So you may find that the Google Earth Pro gives you the ability to know when that picture was taken, which can be very powerful. I was doing some work and the photo was taken in 1985, the satellite view. Obviously, a lot can happen in over 40 years. I mean, that's a long, almost 40 years. That's a lot can change in 40 years. And so you got to make sure you pay attention to that timeline. This is why you need to ground truth what you're having. But, if something's only a couple years old, that can be very important for you and your business. You can do other things with Google Earth Pro. You can look at the satellites, the switch between Earth, sky, and other planets if you want to go. You can do tours. You can look in Google Earth Maps here. You can put pins and place marks and do polygons. You can do temporary places, of course, look at weather, terrain, as you can see here. It's just extraordinarily a powerful tool. Do you need to use the Pro as opposed to the web-based version? I don't know. I mean, I think at minimum, the web version is going to be good enough for many of you. However, if it's something that you're looking to do a lot, maybe saving some of the photos and images, and maybe you have clients that you're doing a lot of work for, you may want to keep that handy on file, then you may want to be thinking about using the Google Earth Pro version, which would be installed on your computer. Something for you definitely to think about. I've certainly used the program. I can't say I've used it every day, but I'm also not in the service industry, okay? So I'm not out necessarily working with clients, but I have used it for some of my research issues where I would need to get a picture of a farmer's land that I was going to be doing some work at, and then be able to have an idea of what I was going into. And that can be very helpful, or explain to others the type of work that we were doing on the property. So again, extraordinarily powerful. I would highly encourage you to check it out to see if it's something that you can use for your business to improve your productivity. Well, I'm Stephen Vantassel. You've been listening to Living the Wildlife as part of the Pest Geek podcast family. Glad you could have joined us. Do take the time, if you would, to subscribe to the channel. Definitely ring the bell so that you can make sure that you've been updated for new editions. I tend to publish every single Friday, and so we'd be glad to have you on board. You can also reach me with comments and criticisms if you would. You can reach me at wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com. That's wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com. I definitely prefer an email response rather than a Facebook Messenger. I'm not a big fan of that program per se. However, because I do give out my email address, you can definitely reach me there. Comments, criticisms, suggestions for new shows. Perhaps you want to be on the show and you have something you want to shout out to the wildlife control industry. Would love to hear you talk about that. And of course, we'd always welcome sponsors for those of you that are interested in sponsoring the show and finding out, reaching our particular audience. We have people that listen from a lot of different locations in the world, believe it or not, which is kind of interesting given we're not a big industry. It's not like technology or something like that where literally hundreds of thousands of people are involved. So it's a pretty niche market. So hopefully you'll find these presentations helpful in terms of expanding your knowledge and education within the area of wildlife control, or vertebrate pest control as we also like to call it. So again, thanks you very much for listening. You've been listening to Stephen Vantassel. I am the host of Living the Wildlife. And why do we call it Living the Wildlife? Because we want you to live the wildlife, not be the wildlife. Take care, everybody.